The first thing Commander Helor noticed was the sizzle. The second was the scent, sharp, acidic, with some kind of volatile sweetness. It reminded him of the fuel leaks aboard the mining freighters from the Oresta Belt, but somehow more edible. He stood silently at the observation panel, 6 ocular nodes dilated to maximum, watching the human carefully. The human, called Marcus Felder, had insisted on preparing his own meal, despite the diplomatic setting. Helor had approved the request, mildly curious. Now, he was riveted. Marcus, sweat already glistening on his forehead, held a small red cylinder and shook it over a bowl of what looked like a pile of noodles on fire. When the lid came off, Helor's translator chirped in warning tones. Capsication levels exceed recommended exposure for respiratory orifices. Marcus grinned at the translator unit mounted on the wall. Yeah, that's how you know it's good. Helor leaned slightly forward. The room was part of the Earth Outreach Cultural Exchange on the orbital diplomatic station, Voris 9. Marcus had arrived only 3 days ago as part of the human envoy crew. He was an engineer, not a diplomat, brought on to manage mechanical systems, but already he'd managed to draw attention in ways no one else had. Today he'd invited Helor to lunch. Marcus twisted his fork into the noodles, lifting them in steaming heaps. His hand trembled slightly. The first bite went in. Helor's sensory data captured it all: the involuntary twitch at the corner of Marcus's left eye, the sudden dilation of his pupils, the sharp exhale through his nose. Then came the sweating. Are you in distress? Helor blinked, his voice modulator shifting to a concerned frequency. Marcus coughed once, then laughed, shaking his head. Nah, this is how it's supposed to be. You are sweating profusely. Yep, that's the spice punching me in the face. It's perfect. You are smiling. Marcus took another bite. His lips were already a little swollen, and he reached for a glass of milk beside the bowl. Because it hurts so good. Helor processed this. You are experiencing pain, yet you are pleased. That's the whole point. I do not understand. Well, Marcus said, breathing heavily now, you wouldn't be the first. Helor considered this for a moment. His species, the Drevians, had long outgrown pain as a concept. Their nervous systems were refined over thousands of years of neural engineering. Pain was filtered out before it reached consciousness. That was the logical path of evolution, or so they thought, until they met humans. Helor's attention shifted back to Marcus, who was now leaning back in the chair, wiping his forehead with a napkin, his entire face red and beaming. I believe you are injuring yourself willingly, Helor said. Not injuring. Testing limits. Big difference. But your body is responding as if it is under threat. Exactly. Helor blinked twice. This must be a form of training. For resistance? Nope, just lunch. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the soft hum of the station and the occasional slurp of noodles. Helor stepped closer. You derive satisfaction from this discomfort. Is this common among your species? Depends who you ask. Some people can't handle spicy food. Others, like me, grew up on it. I'm from New Mexico. Ghost peppers, habaneros, green chili. It's like a rite of passage. Rite of passage involving self-inflicted pain. Marcus laughed again. You ever had a meal that made you feel like you survived something? Like you earned your next breath? No. Then you haven't lived. Helor turned to the side, noting everything. His internal recorder was already saving data for the central archive. He'd seen humans perform under pressure, endure environmental extremes, survive injuries, and even thrive in conditions that should have rendered them unconscious. But this was new. Voluntary pain for pleasure, and not only that, but it made them happy? Helor had to know more. May I attempt this ritual? Marcus hesitated. Then he looked at Helor's gleaming carapace and the faint mist rising from his thermal vents. You sure? I don't want to be responsible for you short-circuiting. I am not wired in the way you suggest. Marcus stood, carrying the pot to the table with exaggerated ceremony. All right then, let's start you off light. No ghost peppers today. I do not perceive any spectral anomalies. Marcus grinned. I meant the pepper. It's a name. Helor accepted a plate of noodles, watching as Marcus sprinkled a bright orange powder across the top. This is a mild blend, Marcus said. Jalapenos, cayenne, chili flakes, nothing too crazy. Helor lifted a utensil with his lower appendage and mimicked the twisting motion. The noodles spun awkwardly, some flopping off the side of the plate. He brought the fork close to his intake. Marcus held his breath. Helor ingested. There was a pause. Then, Helor's vents opened wide. A sound, not unlike a kettle beginning to boil, emerged from his abdomen. His ocular nodes contracted inward. Marcus leaned forward. You okay? I'm processing. Helor remained still for several seconds, then slowly released a low-frequency tone. I am experiencing a foreign sensation. It is not pain as I understand it. It is intrusive, destabilizing, yet illuminating. Welcome to the flavor zone. Helor turned his head. I wish to proceed. Marcus laughed. Now you're getting it. For the next hour, the two sat together. Helor consumed increasingly spicy dishes, Marcus guiding him through the nuances of Scoville units, flavor profiles, the delicate art of balancing heat with taste. Helor's internal temperature regulators had to compensate several times. At one point, a cooling fan activated in his thoracic cavity. You're sweating, Marcus said, pointing. I am not equipped with sweat glands. That is condensation from my internal coolant systems. Close enough. Helor's tone shifted. Your smile has not ceased throughout this ordeal. I guess I'm just wired that way. Or maybe it's the endorphins. Spicy food hits your brain like a reward system. Pain as a reward. Not just pain. The challenge, the resilience, the fact that you can push through it and come out the other side with watery eyes and a goofy grin. Helor stored that. The next day, Helor returned, unannounced, bearing a sealed container. I have attempted to replicate your spice mixture. I wish to test my tolerance autonomously. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You made your own blend? Yes. I consulted your station's digital library. Marcus opened the container, sniffed, then immediately recoiled. Whoa! You put wasabi in this? I found it in the high-impact category. That's not even chili-based, man. I was thorough. Marcus chuckled. All right, but you're going first. Helor ingested a small portion. His limbs stiffened. One ocular node blinked out temporarily. Then, slowly, he hummed, a low harmonic pulse. They have survived. Marcus clapped. You mad lad, you actually did it. I anticipated greater suffering. You'll build tolerance. Give it time. Over the next week, word spread. Other Drevians came to observe. Some tried the food. Most failed. One had to be removed and stabilized when his internal cooling unit seized. But Helor persisted, becoming something of a legend among both humans and Drevians. He even crafted a small guidebook, Capsaicin and the Human Condition. Marcus was invited to speak at the Interspecies Symposium on Cultural Exchange. He wore a red button-down shirt and a tie with chili peppers on it. Helor introduced him. This human has demonstrated a unique trait, an ability to find joy in adversity, to smile through chemical warfare, to engage pain as a method of bonding, reflection, and even entertainment. I believe we have much to learn. Marcus stepped forward. I know it looks weird, I know it doesn't make sense at first, but maybe that's the point. You learn a lot about someone when you see how they handle heat. And we, as a species, have been handling heat since the beginning. Whether it's fire, war, or just a really angry plate of noodles we push through, the audience remained silent for a moment. Then Helor raised one of his appendages and said, You are sweating. Marcus wiped his brow. And I'm still smiling. The crowd erupted in applause. Later that night, Marcus and Helor sat in the mess hall. A fresh batch of wings coated in a sauce Marcus dubbed Inferno 7, steamed between them. "It still hurts," Helor said, reaching for another. "Yeah," Marcus replied, "but now you know why." Helor nodded. "Because we can." Marcus laughed, eyes watering. "That's right." And somewhere between the pain, the laughter, and the sweat, a quiet understanding settled between two unlikely friends, neither stronger, neither superior, just curious beings learning the language of resilience, one pepper at a time. The Drevians didn't knock. They didn't have hands suited for it, and knocking wasn't part of their cultural etiquette. Instead, they signaled entry requests with a light pulse from a chest-mounted emitter. A soft green flash reflected against the metal frame of Marcus's doorway at 800 station time, which he saw out of the corner of his eye while brushing his teeth. "Yeah, come in," he said, mouth full of foam, then remembered. "Right, you can't hear me." He spat, wiped his mouth, and pressed the unlock panel. The door opened with a familiar hiss, revealing Helor, flanked by two new Drevians. One was more compact, its exoshell a matte blue, with a narrow cranial ridge that glowed faintly lavender. The other stood a head taller than Helor, limbs folded neatly, its surface patterned with something like moss, though Marcus assumed it was biofilm. "Morning," Marcus said, stepping back to let them in. "Didn't think I'd be hosting a breakfast club." Helor gestured toward the others. "These are colleagues from the Scientific and Cultural Integration Division. They have questions." The blue Drevian stepped forward, scanning Marcus from head to foot with a narrow beam of violet light. Marcus squinted. "No offense, but you could just ask. I'm not hiding thermal explosives in my socks." "We are not security," Helor said. "They wish to understand what transpired during our prior interaction." "I was eating dinner." "Yes," said the moss-covered one, voice lower-pitched and slightly stilted. "And yet your body entered metabolic stress while your emotional indicators suggested contentment. We find this biologically contradictory." Marcus scratched behind his ear. "You'll have to be more specific. You're talking about the sweating or the flushed skin or the part where I looked like I was going to cry?" "All of it," the blue Drevian said. "You ingested chemical irritants. Your cardiovascular rate increased. Your dermal layer emitted fluid. Yet you continued voluntarily. It's called spicy food. You're overthinking it." "We are Drevians," Helor said. "Overthinking is our default." Marcus walked over to the small kitchenette and started the kettle. "You want to analyze something? Watch how long it takes me to boil water on this sad excuse for a heating coil. That's the real mystery." The blue Drevian took a cautious step closer to the counter. "The substance you consumed. What is the threshold of toxicity for your species?" "Depends on the person. Some folks can't handle anything hotter than black pepper. Others enter chili eating contests and down extracts that'd melt latex gloves." "You ingest industrial-level irritants recreationally?" "Sometimes competitively." The mossy Drevian turned to Helor. "This is consistent with their documented behavioral paradoxes." Marcus poured hot water into a mug. "It's not a paradox, it's context. Pain isn't always bad. Sometimes it's information, sometimes it's a challenge, sometimes it's just part of the ride." The blue Drevian tilted its head. "Yet your species seeks to avoid pain in most scenarios. You medicate routinely. You isolate from environmental extremes. You design for comfort." "Sure," Marcus said, dunking a tea bag. "We also climb mountains without oxygen and run ultramarathons across deserts. We're complicated." Helor stepped forward slightly. "They wish to observe a live demonstration with variables controlled." Marcus blinked. "What, like a lab test?" "Affirmative. We have already prepared a chamber in the bioadaptive simulation wing. No alterations to gravity or atmosphere, only controlled ingestion of your selected irritants." "Not a lab rat." "You would be compensated," said the mossy one. "I'm not a cheap lab rat," Marcus corrected, sipping his tea. "But fine, as long as I get to pick the sauce." 2 hours later, Marcus stood inside a transparent enclosure, seated at a small table with 3 bowls in front of him. Each contained a different sauce, marked only by symbols he couldn't read. The Drevians stood behind a shielded partition, instruments humming, lenses pointed, neural recorders active. "All right," Marcus said, adjusting his posture. "This one looks like it wants to hurt me." He dipped a spoon into the first bowl, tasted it, and immediately exhaled sharply. "Okay, that's got some kick. Maybe scorpion pepper. With vinegar? Little smoky." The blue Drevian turned to Helor. His respiratory activity has increased by 23%. Facial vascularity is rising. He appears to be enjoying it. Marcus coughed once. "That's one down." He moved to the second bowl, hesitated, then took a larger spoonful. A beat passed. Then he leaned back and whistled. "Oh yeah. That's the kind of heat that makes you question your life choices." "Is he deteriorating?" asked the mossy one. "Nope," Marcus said, already reaching for the third bowl. "I'm leveling up." The final sauce was thicker, with a deep red hue. Marcus sniffed it, winced, then took a cautious half spoon. He held it in his mouth for a moment before swallowing. "Whew, that one's not playing around." He blinked several times, rubbed his eyes, and let out a wheezy laugh. "I can feel it in my ears. That's usually a good sign." Behind the glass, the Drevians began speaking over each other. Helor raised one appendage to settle them. He has not requested medical assistance. His vitals are within tolerance. "He cried," said the blue one. Marcus wiped a tear from his cheek. "It's not crying, it's emotional lubrication." The mossy Drevian leaned closer to the monitor. "He is exhibiting signs of systemic distress. Why does he persist?" Marcus held up a finger as he drank from a glass of milk. "Because I want to see if I can. That's all. I'm curious." The Drevians paused. "The answer?" the mossy one asked. "Curiosity." "Yeah. Sometimes that's the only reason we need." Helor turned slightly. "He told me once that humans seek experience through discomfort, that they learn about themselves by enduring voluntary hardship." Marcus exhaled through his nose, eyes still watery. "Sometimes we learn we're tougher than we thought. Other times we learn we're idiots. Either way, we learn something." The blue Drevian's ocular sensors shifted. "Would you permit us to analyze your neurochemical profile?" "You've already signed the waiver?" The mossy one stepped away to activate the scanner. A soft pulse moved through the chamber, briefly illuminating Marcus's skin. He flinched. "Tickles." The scan completed. The results appeared on the Drevian's display. Increased dopamine, endorphins, and mild elevation in adrenaline. Elevated cortisol, but not dangerously so. "So," said Helor, "his system rewards him for this." "Exactly," Marcus said, pointing. "That's the key. Our brains don't always know the difference between danger and excitement. Spicy food tricks it." The blue Drevian recorded the statement. "You exploit a biological loophole." "Now you're getting it." An hour later, Marcus sat in the recovery lounge, sipping cold water and fanning his face with a tablet. Helor entered alone. "Your demonstration has generated significant interest. Requests for interviews, data analysis, and potential replication in virtual simulations are already pending. Do I get a cut if they turn it into a training program?" "Normally, you will be credited as the source specimen." "Charming." Helor paused. "One of the observers noted something unexpected. During your highest distress point, your facial muscles contracted in the zygomatic region." Marcus tilted his head. I smiled. "Yes. At your moment of highest discomfort." "Yeah. That tracks." "Wave?" I guess because I knew I was going to be okay. It hurt, but it wasn't danger. It was just intense. And knowing I could handle it, that felt good." Helor sat beside him. "We are not accustomed to this framework, to derive emotional satisfaction from controlled suffering. We don't always do it on purpose, but when we do, it reminds us we're alive." Helor considered that silently. Then he looked down at a small container in his grasp. I acquired a sample of the third sauce. I wish to test it privately. Marcus narrowed his eyes. You sure? No, but I am curious. Marcus leaned back, smiling faintly. That's the only reason you need. Marcus lifted the spoon cautiously, the viscous red sauce clinging to its surface with an almost resin-like resistance. The scent fermented, smoky and oddly sweet, hung in the sterile air of the Drevians' biochemical adaptation chamber. His sinuses were already tingling from proximity alone. Across the observation window, Helor and the two visiting Drevian scientists monitored him with the kind of focus usually reserved for planetary collisions or rare genetic anomalies. All right, Marcus said, not looking at them. One last trial. Then I'm done for today. He tapped the spoon gently against the rim of the ceramic bowl, then brought it to his mouth. He hesitated just long enough to register the slight tremor in his hand, then tipped the spoon in. There was no immediate reaction. He swallowed, blinked once, and then the heat bloomed, slow and deliberate, like a furnace door swinging open in his chest. A single bead of sweat appeared just below his hairline, followed by another near his temple. He cleared his throat. That's got some depth. The mossy-skinned Drevian, who'd insisted on remaining in the chamber during this final test, made a whirring sound in its throat. Your core temperature has increased marginally. Your lacrimal glands are active. You appear to be under duress. Marcus wiped beneath his eye with his sleeve. Not duress, just a normal autonomic response. Capsaicin doesn't actually cause tissue damage. It just fools the nerves into thinking there's a burn. You are voluntarily activating your pain receptors with a non-nutritive compound, the mossy one said. We have reviewed your species' metabolic charts. There is no caloric benefit to this. Nope, he said, breathing through his mouth now. It's not about calories. It's about experience, tolerance, curiosity. Helor stepped through the wall partition and approached slowly. You previously said it was the challenge that motivated you. Today you add curiosity. Are these distinct? Marcus leaned back in the chair, still flushed. They overlap. You ever wonder what your limits are? Not because anyone's forcing you, not because survival's on the line, just because you want to know? Helor's head tilted. Drevians were conditioned to avoid such risk. Our behavioral matrix favors predictability. That's probably safer, Marcus said. But I think you miss out on some discoveries that way. The mossy Drevian turned toward him. You continue despite sensory overload. Do you anticipate a reward? Marcus let out a short laugh, then coughed. Endorphins, mostly. Maybe a clearer head. Sometimes it just resets your day, like hitting the restart button on your brain. Blue Drevian entered quietly and placed a small device on the table beside Marcus. It emitted a faint green light. We've recalibrated your neurotelemetry profile, it said. There are anomalies we cannot reconcile. Anomalies? Marcus raised an eyebrow. You exhibit a paradoxical combination of stress and pleasure markers. Your hypothalamic activity suggests discomfort, yet your nucleus accumbens indicates satisfaction. Marcus stared at the device. Yeah, that tracks. Pain and reward circuits can overlap. Our brains are weird like that. Helor folded his upper limbs. Would you say the pain is necessary for the satisfaction? Marcus wiped his face again. Not always, but sometimes the contrast makes it more intense. Like if everything was easy, nothing would feel rewarding. The mossy Drevian stepped closer. That is an illogical framework. But it works, Marcus said. We're not machines. We don't run on logic alone. The chamber's ventilation system kicked in, dispersing the lingering vapors. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, eyes still watery but alert. All right, he said. That's enough for today. Any more of that and I'll be feeling it tomorrow. The three Drevians exchanged no words, only a series of subtle head movements and color pulses along their cranial ridges. Then Helor turned back to Marcus. There is one more variable we wish to understand. Marcus groaned. I'm not eating anything else today. No ingestion required, Helor said. We wish to observe your methods of coping after exposure. Marcus stood slowly, joints stiff. You mean how I recover? Helor believed him. He took a deep breath and nodded. All right, you want realism? Follow me. They accompanied him to the human medical station aboard the shared wing of the orbital embassy. The room was quiet, dimly lit, and stocked with what Marcus called re-entry supplies. Cold milk, plain rice, yogurt, and a few cooling gels designed for minor mucosal irritation, the blue Drevian observed as he poured a glass of milk and drank it in slow, steady sips. This counters the effects. Capsaicin is fat-soluble, Marcus said. Water won't help. You need fat or casein to bind to it. You planned for this. Of course. You don't climb a mountain barefoot. The mossy Drevian ran a scanner near his abdomen. Your digestive tract exhibits elevated peristalsis. Is this typical? For something like this? Yeah, it'll move fast. Might regret that in the morning. Helor looked confused. You anticipate gastrointestinal distress? Definitely. And yet you proceeded. There was a silence long enough for Marcus to finish his milk. Then he leaned against the counter. Listen, he said. You're looking for clean cause and effect. But humans, we don't always do things because they make sense. We do them because they feel right, or because they matter to us in ways we can't chart. Leader's ocular nodes contracted slightly. This is difficult to quantify. Then stop trying to quantify it. Try understanding it instead. The blue Drevian adjusted its posture. There is concern among our research board. They fear humans may engage in self-harm under the guise of experimentation. Marcus shook his head. This isn't self-harm, it's self-discovery. There's a line, sure, but we know where it is. The point isn't to suffer, it's to feel alive. The mossy Drevian was silent for a moment, then turned to Helor. I wish to attempt ingestion. Marcus nearly choked on what remained of his milk. Wait, really? Yes, it said. A low-dose sample. I wish to corroborate his experience. Helor hesitated. Your nervous system is not adapted for nociceptive overload. You lack the secondary buffer clusters. The mossy Drevian replied firmly. I am willing. Marcus opened the cooler beneath the counter and pulled out a sealed packet labeled Level 1 Tangy Tingle. He handed it over. Start with this. Half a teaspoon. Swirl it around your intake chamber, then swallow. The Drevian took the packet reverently and followed the instructions. A pause, then a subtle twitch in its thoracic plates. My inner membrane is vibrating. Think it's normal. Uba. There is a burning sensation. Also normal. I am disoriented. Hividameh. Another pause. Then the mossy Drevian's posture shifted, less tense, more upright. Its vocal pitch changed slightly. If you... Marcus offered a faint grin. Told you. The blue Drevian stepped forward. Are you in pain? Yes, the mossy one replied. But it is tolerable, and somehow clarifying. Helor turned to Marcus. You have demonstrated something we had not anticipated. What's that? Your species does not merely adapt to discomfort, it embraces it, harnesses it. Even when there is no necessity, you explore it. Marcus nodded. That's probably why we made it to space in the first place. The mossy Drevian tapped its intake valve lightly. I wish to try a stronger sample. Not today you don't, Marcus said. Your membrane's going to need a few hours to reset. Helor looked contemplative. Perhaps it is not the pain itself that defines you, but the way you frame it. Exactly, Marcus said. Pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's just a message. If you listen instead of running from it, you learn something. The room grew quiet, save for the soft hum of the filtration units. The mossy Drevian sat down, still focused inwardly, and the blue one deactivated its scanner. Helor turned toward the exit. We will compile our findings. There is much to reconsider. Marcus stood, cracked his neck, and stretched. Need me again? I'll be in my quarters. probably eating a plain cracker and lying very, very still. Helor paused before the door. You endured great discomfort for no tactical gain. Yeah, Marcus said, but I expanded 3 alien minds over lunch. I'd call that a win. No one spoke after that. The Drevians departed, each visibly processing the experience in their own way. Marcus remained behind, sipping cold water, letting the last of the burn fade from his mouth. He sat there a long time, alone but not lonely, quietly satisfied that somewhere between the sweat, the tears, and the heat, something had shifted, something that had nothing to do with food at all.